everyone, my name is Rachel. Welcome back to my channel. Today I am bringing you guys my May mid-month wrap-up, so I'm going to be discussing all of the books that I read in the first half of this month. So I have some books that I didn't like so much, but I also have 3 5-star reads to talk about. So these last couple of weeks have definitely been kind of a mixed bag. I think what I'm going to do is work my way from the books that I liked the least all the way to the books that I liked the most. So with that being said, let's just get into it. The first book I want to discuss is An Enchantment of Ravens by Margaret Rogerson. It's taking place in a fairy world. We have Isabel, who is a human, and she paints these wonderful portraits, and in this world, fae can't do anything that's known as craft. They can't paint, they can't cook, and if they try to do any kind of craft, they will literally like crumble away. So Isabel is definitely very coveted in their town because she's such a talented artist, and a prince from the Autumn Court, whose name is Rook, he comes to her for a portrait one day, and she ends up painting human sorrow in his eyes, which can be very dangerous because painting a human emotion onto a fairy makes them look weak, essentially. The plot kind of goes on from there. I really wanted to love this, guys. I ended up giving this 2.5 stars. For one thing, I absolutely hate when there's insta-love, and that was definitely the case between Isabel and Rook. There was just no development in their romantic relationship. I felt like all of a sudden both of them realized that they loved each other, and I was just like, where did that come from? Also, I just wasn't a fan of the direction that the plot was going in. I found myself getting more and more bored as the book went along, which is crazy because, as you can tell, this is a very short book. I think it's barely 300 pages, so for a book that short to bore me, that's kind of crazy. And so I found myself, like, the first half of this book I was like, oh, maybe this is like a 4.5 stars, and then as I went along I was like, okay, maybe like a 4 or 3.5, and then by the end I was like, no, it is a 2.5. Yeah. I am still looking forward to reading her other standalone fantasy novel, which is called Sorcery of Thorns, because I've heard nothing but amazing things about that one, where this one has gotten definitely much more mixed reviews. The next book I want to discuss is Secrets of a Summer Night by Lisa Kleypas. This is my second book from her, and this is book 1 in her Wallflower series, essentially following these 4 women who are reaching their mid-20s, and back in the Regency era, that was pretty much reaching old maid age, and so they all become friends with each other so that they can help each other find husbands, essentially. So this one is about Annabelle. Her family is definitely in some financial trouble, and there's this guy Simon who is a self-made businessman. He is kind of like an entrepreneur. He has money invested in all kinds of different industries, and he is just really infatuated with Annabelle, and he really wants her as his mistress and not his wife, because at the beginning of this book he never wants to get married. And so the plot basically goes on from there. I will say I really liked the characters. I enjoyed the 4 best friends. I can see why this is a beloved series simply because of their characters, and I liked Simon as a love interest. He wasn't anything that like blew me away or anything like that, but I thought he was a solid love interest. I liked that he was a self-made man and that he wasn't like a duke or a member of nobility. That is something different from most of the historical romances that I've read. My main problem with this book, I ended up giving this 3 stars. It was very slow paced. Oh my goodness. I feel like, especially the first half of this book, like nothing really happened. So for instance, there was this part where Annabelle got bit by a snake, and her whole recovery process, I swear, took like 20% of the book. And I was just like, why, girl? Like, it didn't really do anything to further the romance. It didn't do anything to further the plot. So it was things like that that definitely made me like this book less and less as I kept reading. I'm really glad that I had the audiobook off of Scribd, because if I was just reading this physically, I would have been really bored and I might have DNF'd this. This is a lot of people's least favorite book of Lisa Kleypas's, so I'm not really surprised that I didn't love it, but I did want to read the Wallflower series in its entirety, so that's why I read this one. Next, I want to quickly discuss the Shades of Magic trilogy by V.E. Schwab. So the 3 books in this series, first we have A Darker Shade of Magic, then the second book is A Gathering of Shadows, And the third and final book is A Conjuring of Light. I'm not going to talk too much about these books in this video because I did an entire reading vlog where I binged this trilogy in like 5 days or something like that. So I will link that reading vlog up in the cards above. I've also been doing kind of a reading vlog series videos where I just binge entire trilogies or series or things like that, and that's been a really fun time. Unfortunately, this trilogy as a whole disappointed me. I will say I really enjoyed the first book, which is A Darker Shade of Magic. I gave this one 4 stars. I really enjoyed the overall plot and the characters, but I did feel like as the series went along with these other 2 books that the series just kind of went downhill for me, and I ended up giving both of these 3 stars. Yeah, unfortunately this trilogy didn't really do it for me, but I do know a lot of people on BookTube who absolutely adore this series, so I may be in the minority. Hey guys, so finally I'm going to talk about the 3 5-star reads of these past couple of weeks. The first one I want to discuss is Evidence of the Affair by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This is an Amazon original story. It is a very short novella. So this story centers around Carrie and David, and this novella is essentially just a series of letters between the 2 of them when Carrie discovers that her husband is having an affair with David's wife. So they write letters to each other to kind of process the fact that their spouses are having an affair, and they're just trying to console one another. And honestly, as short as this novella was, I think I read it in like an hour. It just punched me right in the feels, especially at the end. I thought that this was simply perfect. Taylor Jenkins Reid is quickly becoming one of my favorite authors ever. I have really loved both Daisy Jones and the Six and The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, and I also really enjoyed After I Do, so I definitely want to check out more of her backlist really soon. And the next 5-star read I want to talk about is Romancing the Duke by Tessa Dare. No one is surprised that I'm giving another Tessa Dare book 5 stars, but this is the first book in her Castles Ever After series, which is the series that she published with Avon before the Girl Meets Duke series, which is definitely her most popular, and it is her most recent series. So this is a series of 4 standalones kind of, but there's the same idea going through all 4 of the books, that there was this old man that bought these castles and left them to these 4 women. In this book we're following Isolde. She goes by Izzy, and her father recently passed away. Her father was a really famous author, like think the Regency era J.K. Rowling. He wrote this really popular fantasy series, but unfortunately before he died he didn't take care of his finances really. So Izzy is left with nothing except that she gets this letter that some man has left her a castle, and so she shows up to this castle, but lo and behold there's this gorgeous guy named Ransom who's actually a duke who is the owner of this castle. So part of this plot is them trying to work through, well, whose castle is it really, because it was left to Izzy, but it's also Ransom's. As far as he knows, he didn't sell it to anybody. Ransom is an interesting hero because he is blind. I've never read a historical romance with a hero that has that disability. And in classic Tessa Dare fashion, he's one of those like more brooding, bitter heroes. She tends to write those kind of heroes a lot in her books, which I do enjoy that trope. Something that I just adore about Tessa Dare is her creativity in this genre. I do feel like a lot of authors that write in the historical romance genre kind of stick to the same formulas as far as types of characters and situations and stories and things like that. But for instance, in this book, like I talked about, you know, Izzy's father was a very famous author. And so while they're at this castle, this group of what is essentially cosplayers show up, and they're dressed up as different characters from her father's series. And that was just really fun and unexpected. It's things like that that make me give her books 5 stars, because they're just so fun and so different and creative. I did really enjoy the romance. I mean, who doesn't love a romance with a brooding hero and a vibrant heroine who shows him what true love really is? This is also definitely a Beauty and the Beast retelling, so if you're into that kind of stuff, I definitely would recommend this as well. And the final book that I want to discuss for this video is A Court of Mist and Fury by the icon, the queen, Sarah J. Maas. This is book 2 in her Court of Thorns and Roses series. I did film and edit a reading vlog for this that should be going up next week, so definitely be on the lookout for that, and I'll link it up in the cards above once I post it. So I'm not going to discuss my thoughts too much in this video, but just know that I gave this 5 stars. I enjoyed it so much more than the first book. I did know going into it that I was going to really enjoy it, just because I feel like everyone absolutely adores this book and it's like their favorite Sarah J. Maas book ever. So I definitely went into this with pretty high expectations, and I do have to say at the end of the day, it did pretty much meet those expectations for me. I of course loved the epic romance between Feyre and Rhysand, and I am now definitely a Rhysand stan. I totally see where you guys are coming from now, and I am really looking forward to reading the last book in this trilogy really soon. All right guys, that's going to be it for my mid-month wrap-up. I would love it if you guys would leave a comment below if you want to discuss anything having to do with the books that I discussed in this video. I would also love it if you would consider pressing that like button and subscribing, and I thank you in advance if you do. I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye!